Kingston, Jamaica, 1930. The docks are crowded with workers unloading cargo under the midday sun. A man reads a newspaper aloud to the crowd gathered around him. The headline announces the coronation of Haile Selassie I as Emperor of Ethiopia. Workers stop moving and listen as the reader's voice rises with each word. Ethiopia, the only African nation never colonized, now has a black emperor crowned. Men exchange glances, their eyes widening as the significance settles in. One docker whispers to another, a black king ruling a black nation. The foreman, a white overseer, shouts at them to return to work immediately. The men move slowly, reluctantly, their minds still processing what they heard. That evening, clusters of workers gather in West Kingston's zinc-roofed yards. They pass around copies of Marcus Garvey's newspaper, The Black Man. Garvey's words from years before echo through their discussions and debates. Look to Africa, when a black king shall be crowned, he had prophesied. Now, Selassie sits on the throne, and the prophecy seems fulfilled. A young man named Leonard Howell stands before a small gathering. He holds a photograph of Selassie, clipped from an international magazine article. Howell speaks with quiet intensity, pointing at the emperor's dignified face. "This is our Redeemer," he says, his voice steady and certain. "Not in some distant heaven, but ruling on earth right now." The crowd leans in closer, hungry for meaning in a world of oppression. Jamaica is a British colony where poverty crushes the black majority relentlessly. Most work on sugar plantations or docks for wages that barely sustain life. Colonial police enforce laws designed to keep black Jamaicans subordinate and powerless. The Anglican Church preaches obedience to white authority as God's divine will. But Howell's message offers something different: dignity through African identity and liberation. Within weeks, Howell travels across rural Jamaica, speaking in village squares. He carries Selassie's photograph, like a sacred icon, showing it to everyone. Crowds grow larger at each stop as word spreads about his message. He tells them they are not inferior, not cursed, not destined for servitude. They are Ethiopians scattered abroad, children of a divine African king. Colonial authorities watch nervously as Howell's influence spreads through the countryside. Police reports describe him as dangerous, seditious, threatening the colonial stability and order. In Spanish Town, Howell speaks to over 300 people in a public square. He declares that black Jamaicans owe no allegiance to the British king. Their true king is Selassie, the Lion of Judah, God incarnate. The crowd erupts in cheers, fists raised high into the evening air. A white magistrate watches from a balcony, his jaw clenched in anger. He summons the police chief and points toward Howell in the crowd. "Arrest him," the magistrate orders, his voice cold and decisive. Officers push through the crowd, batons drawn, moving toward Howell's position. People close ranks around Howell, blocking the officer's path with their bodies. A woman shouts a warning, and Howell slips through the crowd's protective shield. He disappears into the narrow alleys before police can reach him. The officers grab two men standing near where Howell had been speaking. They drag them away as the crowd protests loudly. Surging forward, more police arrive with rifles, forming a line to push people back. The crowd disperses slowly, anger simmering beneath forced compliance and fear. Howell moves to the hills of St. Catherine Parish, away from town surveillance. He establishes a commune called Pinnacle on leased land, surrounded by forest. Families arrive carrying their possessions, ready to live by new principles. Tegro food study, scripture, and reject colonial systems of control entirely. Howell teaches them that the Bible has been mistranslated to enslave minds. The original Israelites were black, he explains, not the white figures in paintings. Ethiopia represents Zion, the promised land, Africa, their true ancestral home. Smoking ganja becomes a sacrament, a way to commune with divine wisdom. Men grow their hair in locks, rejecting European grooming standards completely. Women wear natural styles, refusing to straighten hair or lighten skin. At Pinnacle, they create their own governance, independent of colonial interference. Howell distributes photographs of Selassie as identification cards to commune members. These cards declare loyalty to the Ethiopian emperor, not the British crown. Residents refuse to recognize British law as legitimate authority over their lives. They stop paying taxes, calling them tribute to an illegitimate occupying power. Colonial administrators in Kingston receive reports about Pinnacle with growing alarm. The governor convenes a meeting with police commissioners and plantation owners. This cannot be allowed to spread. A sugar state owner warns them. If workers believe they don't need our system, the economy collapses. The police commissioner suggests immediate action to dismantle the Pinnacle commune. But the governor hesitates, concerned about sparking wider unrest across Jamaica. Meanwhile, Pinnacle's population swells to nearly 2,000 residents and followers. They farm communally, trade goods, and live largely self-sufficient from colonial economy. Visitors from Kingston and other parishes come seeking Howell's teachings. They return to their communities, spreading the message of African redemption. In Kingston's trench town, a young carpenter named Brother Samuel organizes gatherings. He holds informal study sessions in his yard every evening after work. Men and women arrive after dark, sitting on benches under dim lamplight. Samuel reads from the Bible, interpreting passages through Howell's African-centered lens. "Babylon holds us captive," he explains, pointing to the colonial government. "But Zion awaits us, the return to African consciousness and dignity." Police informants infiltrate these gatherings, taking notes on who attends regularly. Names appear in reports filed with the Special Branch Intelligence Division. The colonial government began planning coordinated operations against Rastafari communities. In May 1934, police surrounded Pinnacle before dawn with rifles ready. Over 100 officers move in formation through the surrounding forest. They have warrants for Howell's arrest on charges of sedition against the crown. Residents wake too, shouting and the sound of boots crushing through crops. Howell emerges from his dwelling, calm/hands. Visible, no resistance. Offered, "You have no authority here," he says quietly to the arresting officer. The officer strikes him across the face with the back of his hand. Blood runs from Howell's lip as officers bind his wrists with rope. Residents gather, watching helplessly as their leader is dragged toward waiting vehicles. A woman rushes forward screaming, and an officer shoves her to the ground. Children cry as police begin searching dwellings, overturning furniture and confiscating documents. They pile Selassie's photographs into a heap and set them on fire. Officers destroy farming equipment, claiming it's evidence of illegal enterprise and activities. They arrested 16 other men, accusing them of conspiracy and refusing legal authority. The arrested are loaded into trucks and driven to Spanish Town prison. At his trial, Howell refuses to recognize the court's jurisdiction over him. He stands silent when the judge asks him to enter a plea. "Do you understand the charges against you?" the judge asks impatiently. Howell responds, "I recognize only the authority of Emperor Haile Selassie." The courtroom erupts as supporters in the gallery stand and applaud. The judge pounds his gavel, demanding order, threatening to clear the room. Police remove spectators forcibly, dragging them through the courthouse doors. Howell is sentenced to 2 years hard labor for sedition and disturbing the peace. His followers receive sentences ranging from 6 months to 1 year. News of the arrests spreads rapidly through Jamaica's black communities. In Trenchtown, Brother Samuel's gatherings grow larger, despite increased police surveillance. He speaks now with greater urgency, warning that Babylon's attack has begun. "They fear us," he tells his listeners, his voice low and intense. "They fear what happens when we remember who we truly are." Police raid Samuel's yard on a Wednesday night during a gathering. They arrested 23 people, charging them with unlawful assembly and disturbance. Families are separated as officers load prisoners into police wagons. A mother screams for her teenage son as he's pushed into a vehicle. Officers use batons to force the crowd back from the departing wagons. Across Kingston, similar raids target known Rastafari meeting places and gathering spots. The colonial government issued an official statement labeling Rastafari a dangerous cult. Newspapers publish editorials calling followers mentally unstable and threats to social order. The Anglican Church condemns the movement as heretical blasphemy against Christian doctrine. Middle-class black Jamaicans distance themselves, fearing association will cost them employment. But in the yards, ghettos, and rural villages, the message spreads faster. Young men grow their locks, despite workplace prohibitions and social stigma. Women refuse to worship in churches that preach subservience to white power. They gather in secret locations, changing meeting places to evade police detection. A network of safe houses emerges across Kingston's poorest neighborhoods. Followers develop coded language and signals to warn of approaching police. When officers raid one location, gatherings simply move to another the next night. The movement becomes more organized, more careful, more difficult to suppress. In prison, Howell spends his days in hard labor, breaking rocks under guard supervision. But at night, he teaches fellow prisoners about African identity and redemption. His message reaches men convicted of various crimes, finding fertile ground in their anger. They leave prison as converts, returning to their communities as teachers. By 1936, Rastafari gatherings operated in every major parish across Jamaica. Police can arrest leaders, but new ones emerge immediately to replace them. The movement has become hydra-headed, impossible to kill by cutting one leader. Colonial administrators realize suppression alone cannot eliminate this spreading consciousness. consciousness. They convene strategy meetings, searching for methods to discredit the movement entirely. Meanwhile, Howell is released from prison in 1936. His sentence complete, he returns to Pinnacle to find it partially destroyed, but not abandoned. Families have remained, rebuilding dwellings and replanting crops in his absence. They welcome him with drumming and chanting that echoes through the hills. Howell surveys the damage done during his imprisonment with quiet determination. They cannot destroy what lives here, he says, pointing to his chest. Within months, Pinnacle's population exceeded its previous size, growing even larger. The commune becomes more fortified, with watchers posted to alert against police approaches. Residents stockpile food and supplies, preparing for future raids they know will come. Howell organizes the community into units responsible for defense, farming, and education. Young men train in hand-to-hand combat, preparing to resist arrests physically if necessary. Women organize supply networks, hiding resources that police might confiscate during raids. The settlement takes on characteristics of a military encampment preparing for siege. In Kingston, police increase patrols in neighborhoods known for Rastafari activity. Officers stop men with locks, demanding identification and reasons for their appearance. Many are arrested on vagrancy charges or for allegedly looking suspicious to authorities. Prisons begin filling with Rastafari followers serving short sentences for minor violations. But each arrest creates a new teacher spreading the message inside prison walls. The system meant to suppress them becomes another avenue for recruitment and expansion. Colonial officials grow increasingly frustrated as their tactics backfire repeatedly and consistently. The governor receives reports that the movement is now spreading beyond Jamaica entirely. Jamaican workers in Cuba, Panama, and Costa Rica are forming Rastafari communities abroad. The message of African redemption resonates everywhere the British Empire has created poverty. In October 1938, labor strikes paralyze Kingston's docks and sugar plantations. Workers demand higher wages and better conditions, refusing to load ships or harvest cane. Many strikers wear locks and invoke Rastafari principles during negotiations with plantation owners. Police are called to break the strike, arriving with rifles and tear gas ready. Workers link arms, forming human chains across the dock entrances. Officers fire tear gas canisters into the crowd, sending workers running and choking. But the strikers regroup, returning with wet cloths covering their faces. They advance toward police lines, singing hymns with Rastafari lyrics and African themes. Officers raise rifles, aiming at the approaching workers with fingers on triggers. A tense silence falls as both sides face each other across 20 feet of pavement. One wrong move could trigger a massacre in broad daylight, witnessed by hundreds. The standoff continues for 3 hours under the brutal afternoon sun. Beating down, the dock supervisor steps between the police line and the workers. Finally, he's sweating, his white shirt soaked through, hands trembling as he speaks. "We'll negotiate," he says lewdly, his voice cracking under the pressure. Workers hold their position, unmoved, waiting for concrete terms and real commitments. The supervisor promises a meeting with plantation owners within 48 hours. Slowly, the workers lower their arms, but they don't disperse from the area. They remain at the docks, sitting in groups, establishing an occupation. Police withdraw to the perimeter, maintaining visible presence but avoiding direct confrontation. News of the standoff spreads through Kingston by nightfall, energizing other communities. In Trenchtown, Brother Samuel addresses a packed yard with renewed conviction. "They blinked first," he told the crowd, his fist raised high. "They saw we would not break, and they stepped back." The crowd responds with drumming and chanting that lasts deep into the night. Police watch from across the street, taking notes, but making no arrests yet. The temporary victory emboldens Rastafari communities to organize more openly than before. Public gatherings increase in frequency, size, and boldness across Kingston's neighborhoods. At Pinnacle, Howell receives word of the dock workers' successful resistance action. He calls the community together under the large cotton tree at the settlement center. "Babylon trembles when we stand firm," he tells them, his voice carrying authority. "But they will return with greater force to crush what they cannot control." His prediction proves accurate within days as new threats emerge from the government. The colonial legislature passes laws specifically targeting Rastafari religious practices and gatherings. Growing locks is classified as a public health violation subject to forced cutting. Ganja possession now carries mandatory prison sentences of up to 5 years. Gatherings of more than 5 Rastafari members require police permits, rarely granted. The new laws give authorities tools to arrest anyone visibly identified as Rast. Police begin systematic sweeps through Kingston's poorest neighborhoods every night after dark. They enter yards without warrants, searching for ganja or evidence of illegal gatherings. Men are dragged from their homes, held down while officers cut their locks off. Women scream and fight, trying to protect their husbands and sons from violation. Children watch from doorways as their fathers are humiliated and arrested publicly. In one night alone, over 60 men are arrested in trench towns, crammed alleys. They're processed through police stations, fingerprinted, photographed, and charged with various violations. Most cannot afford bail, so they remain in cells awaiting trial for weeks. The prisons overflow with Rastafari followers, creating dangerous overcrowding and unsanitary conditions. Brother Samuel goes into hiding after police issue a warrant for his arrest. He moves between safe houses, never staying more than 2 nights anywhere. But he continues organizing, sending messages through trusted couriers to scattered communities. Resistance must adapt, he tells his network through coded written communications. We cannot fight their guns with our hands, but we can fight their lies with truth. Followers begin producing pamphlets explaining Rastafari beliefs in simple, accessible language. They distribute these secretly at markets, bus stops, and anywhere people gather regularly. The pamphlets reframe colonial oppression as spiritual warfare between Babylon and Zion clearly. They quote Bible verses alongside Marcus Garvey's speeches and news about Emperor Selassie I. Middle-class Jamaicans who read these pamphlets begin questioning narratives they'd accepted previously. Some quietly sympathize, though few risk openly supporting the persecuted Rastafari movement. The colonial government pressures newspapers to stop publishing anything positive about the movement. Editors comply, running stories that portray Rastafari as criminals and dangerous social deviants. One headline reads, "Cult members threaten social order. Police increase enforcement efforts." But in the yards and villages, people know what they see with their own eyes. They witness peaceful gatherings, violently disrupted by police wielding batons and tear gas. They see neighbors arrested for growing their hair according to their religious beliefs. The disconnect between official propaganda and lived reality creates growing skepticism about authority. In May 1940, police launched their largest raid yet on Pinnacle Commune. Over 200 officers surround the settlement at dawn with military precision. They bring trucks, dogs, and weapons appropriate for invading a fortified military position. Residents wake 2 loudspeakers demanding immediate surrender and evacuation from the premises. Howell stands at the settlement's entrance, arms crossed, blocking the main path. Behind him stand 40 men, unarmed but resolute, forming a human barrier. "You have no right here," Howell states calmly to the commanding officer. The officer reads aloud from a legal document authorizing seizure of the property. The landowner has revoked the lease, claiming Howell violated the terms through illegal activities. Howell knows this is orchestrated, pressure applied by the government to the landowner. "This land is Zion," he responds, his voice unwavering despite obvious danger. "You cannot evict us from our spiritual home with your colonial papers," the officer signals, and the police advance in formation toward the defensive line. Officers grab men, wresting them to the ground, binding their wrists roughly. Women and children scream as police push through the settlement, destroying structures systematically. They set fire to dwellings, claiming they're eliminating health hazards and illegal constructions. Smoke rises thick and black as years of communal building burn rapidly. Howell is arrested again, charged with trespassing, unlawful assembly, and inciting resistance. Over 100 residents are arrested, loaded into trucks like captured prisoners of war. Children are separated from parents, placed temporarily in government custody pending family claims. The destruction of Pinnacle takes 3 days, as police ensure nothing remains standing. They burn crops, dismantle irrigation systems, and fill the community well with debris. The message is clear. Rastafari will not be tolerated in any organized form. Howell receives a 5-year sentence, the judge calling him a persistent threat. Other leaders from Pinnacle receive sentences ranging from 2 to 4 years of hard labor. The community scatters, families fleeing 2 different parishes, trying to rebuild elsewhere. But the destruction of Pinnacle doesn't destroy the movement it represented and embodied. Instead, survivors carry the teachings to new locations, spreading them more widely. Without a central location, the movement becomes truly decentralized and harder to suppress. Small gatherings emerge in dozens of locations rather than one large commune. Police lack the resources to raid everywhere simultaneously, so the movement persists underground. In Kingston's Buckawall neighborhood, a new generation of young Rastafari emerges. They're more militant, angrier, less patient than Howell's generation had been. They've grown up watching their fathers arrested, their mothers humiliated by police brutality. brutality. One young man named Brother Marcus addresses a secret gathering in an abandoned warehouse. "We cannot keep running," he says, his voice hard with barely controlled rage. "We cannot keep letting them beat us, cut us, lock us away." His audience consists of young men in their 20s, all wearing locks despite consequences. They've lost jobs, been expelled from schools, and rejected by families for their beliefs. They have nothing left to lose, which makes them dangerous to the system. Brother Marcus proposes active resistance rather than passive endurance and spiritual retreat. "When they come to cut our locks, we fight back," he declares. "When they raid our gatherings, we defend ourselves with whatever means necessary." The room erupts in agreement, young men shouting their support for confrontation. But an older man named Elder Joseph stands, raising his hand for silence. "Violence is Babylon's weapon," he warns, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "If we fight with their tools, we become what they say we are." The room is divided between those seeking militant resistance and those counseling spiritual warfare. Brother Marcus argues that nonviolence hasn't stopped the persecution or protected their communities. Elder Joseph counters that violence will justify complete military suppression and total destruction. The debate continues for hours without resolution, revealing growing tensions within the movement. Eventually, both factions agree to respect each other's chosen paths while maintaining unity. But the split reflects a fundamental question facing all oppressed communities under pressure. Should resistance remain nonviolent, even when violence is used against them relentlessly? Or does survival sometimes require matching force with force to defend what's sacred? These questions have no easy answers, and Jamaica's Rastafari wrestled with them daily. Meanwhile, World War II redirects colonial attention and resources away from domestic suppression. Britain needs Jamaica's support, its soldiers, and its agricultural production for the war effort. The government quietly reduces raids, needing social stability more than ideological purity now. Rastafari communities expand during this breathing space, establishing new settlements in rural areas. They remain cautious, keeping gatherings small, avoiding attention that might provoke renewed crackdowns. In prison, Howell spends his sentence organizing educational programs for fellow inmates. He teaches literacy, history, and scripture to men who've been denied formal education. Prison officials allow it, believing education might make prisoners more compliant and manageable. But Howell uses education to spread consciousness, awakening men to their oppression's roots. When prisoners are released, they carry this consciousness back to their communities like seeds. The prison system inadvertently becomes a training ground for Rastafari teachers and organizers. By 1943, estimates suggest over 5,000 Jamaicans openly identify as Rastafari followers. Thousands more sympathize privately, attending gatherings occasionally, supporting the philosophy without full commitment. The movement has survived everything thrown at it: arrests, raids, propaganda, and forced exile. Its survival proves something the colonial government doesn't want to acknowledge or accept. You cannot suppress an idea whose time has come among people desperate for meaning. The promise of African redemption, of dignity, of belonging to something greater resonates deeply. In a society built on racial hierarchy and exploitation, Rastafari offers a radical alternative vision. It says black people are not inferior, not cursed, not destined for servitude forever. It says their true home is Africa, their true king is Selassie, and their true destiny is liberation. This message cannot be killed by cutting locks or burning settlements to the ground. It lives in songs, in prayers, in the way people greet each other daily. It lives in the refusal to accept colonial definitions of worth and humanity. In October 1945, Howell was released from prison for the second time. He's older now, his body worn by hard labor and harsh conditions, but his eyes still burn with conviction that hasn't dimmed despite years of punishment. He travels to Kingston, avoiding Pinnacle's destroyed ruins, seeking new communities instead. In Bakawol, young Rastafari greet him with reverence, calling him elder and father. They ask for guidance as tensions with police continue despite reduced raid frequency. Howell listens to their stories of harassment, arrests, and daily indignities they endure. He hears their anger, their desire to fight back, their frustration with endless patience. Babylon wants you to fight, he tells them finally, choosing words carefully, because then they can call you criminals and destroy you with public approval. Our weapon is truth, lived daily, visible in how we carry ourselves with dignity. The young men listen, some convinced, others skeptical that dignity alone can defeat oppression. That night, police raided the gathering despite it being peaceful and entirely legal. They arrive with batons swinging, not asking questions, just attacking indiscriminately and violently. Brother Marcus fights back, grabbing an officer's baton and striking him across the shoulder. Other young men join him, and suddenly the raid becomes a full brawl. Howell tries to stop the fighting, shouting for everyone to stand down immediately. But the violence has momentum now, fed by years of accumulated rage and humiliation. Bottles fly, fists connect with flesh, and blood flows on both sides of the conflict. Reinforcements arrive, overwhelming the Rastafari defenders with superior numbers and weapons. Finally, over 30 men are arrested, including Howell, Brother Marcus, and Elder Joseph. They're charged with rioting, assault on police officers, and conspiracy to commit violence. The newspapers report it as proof that Rastafari is inherently violent and dangerous. Editorial columns call for the complete eradication of the movement through any means necessary. The brief period of reduced persecution ends as authorities renew their commitment to total suppression. But something has shifted that authorities don't fully recognize or understand yet. The movement has spread beyond Jamaica's shores, carried by migrants to Britain and America. In London's Brixton neighborhood, Jamaican immigrants establish Rastafari gatherings in basement rooms. In New York's Harlem, the message finds fertile ground among African Americans seeking connection. What began as one man's vision on Jamaica's docks has become international consciousness. Colonial authorities can raid every yard in Kingston, arrest every visible Rastafari member, but they cannot stop the idea from spreading wherever black people face oppression. The message travels through music, through poetry, through quiet conversations in barbershops. It travels through the example of people who refuse to bow, who maintain dignity under pressure. In his cell, awaiting trial, Howell knows the movement has outgrown any individual leader. He knows that whether he lives or dies, whether he's imprisoned or freed, it continues. The seed planted in 1930 has become a forest impossible to cut down completely. Babylon can burn individual trees, but the forest grows back stronger each time. Outside the prison walls, young Rastafari prepare for a long struggle ahead. They know the persecution will continue, that more raids will come, more arrests will follow. They know they'll face rejection from family, denial of employment, and constant police harassment. But they also know they've found something worth suffering for, worth resisting for. They've found identity, purpose, and community in a world designed to deny them all three. They've found a vision of liberation that no prison can contain or baton can beat out. The struggle is not over, not close to over, perhaps never truly over, but it continues, day by day, person by person, choice by choice. In yards across Kingston, drums beat as night falls over the city. Voices rise in Nyabingi chants, asserting resistance to all oppressors. Police listen from their stations, writing reports, planning tomorrow's raids and operations. The cycle continues, endless, exhausting, unresolved. Each side, locked in, struggle without a clear end.